Welcome to TalkTickers. We're doing a deep dive today into EDAP TMS's first quarter 2025 results.
Yeah, we've got the earnings call transcript right here. Lots to get through.
Right. So our mission, as always, is to kind of unpack the key stuff, strategy, the numbers, what's working, what's maybe not working so well.
Basically, cut through the noise and find the signal.
Exactly. And figure out why you should care about this company, especially their focus on HIFU technology.
Yeah.
You know, for things like prostate cancer and now endometriosis too.
It's a fascinating space. EDAP's making a big strategic shift. And this call, well, it gives us a pretty clear window into how that's actually playing out.
Okay, so let's start there. The big picture. What's the main strategy EDAP is pushing right now?
It's all about focus. Really zeroing in. They've been very clear. They want to be the global leader in HIFU focal therapy.
HIFU meaning high-intensity focused ultrasound.
Precisely. And the centerpiece of that is their Focal One platform.
Okay, so if they're focusing there, what does that mean for the rest of their business?
It means they're actively pulling back from other areas, deliberately. I think their older ESWL technology for kidney stones and their distribution business, they expect those to shrink.
Ah, okay, so that's crucial context for the financial numbers, right? Because the total revenue might look a bit weird if parts are shrinking on purpose.
Exactly right. You have to understand that strategy to read the numbers properly. So total worldwide revenue for Q1, $13.6 million.
Which is down from last year.
Yeah, down 9.1% compared to Q1 2024, which was $14.9 million. So you see that headline number down 9%, and you might think,
But the core business, the HIFU part they're focusing on, how did that do?
That's where the strategy shows up. HIFU revenue was actually $6.2 million. That's up 6.8% year over year.
Okay, so the focus area is growing.
It is. The overall drop was, well, pretty much according to plan, driven by those non-core bits. ESWL revenue fell almost 24%, and distribution was down about 17.5%.
Got it. Core up, legacy down faster, so total revenue dips. How did that translate to the bottom line, the profit or loss?
Well, the net loss widened. They reported a loss of 7.1 million for the quarter. That works out to about 0.19 euro per share.
And how does that compare to last year?
Last year, Q1 2024, the net loss was smaller, 4.5 million or 0.1 hour per share.
So bigger loss. Why? Just the revenue shift?
Right.
Or are they spending more?
It's a bit of both. The revenue mix plays a part, but they are definitely investing heavily in that HIFU growth engine. Operating expenses actually ticked up slightly, 11.7 million this quarter versus 11.2 million last year.
And they link that spending directly to building up HIFU sales, R&D, clinical stuff.
Yeah, that's what management said. Building the infrastructure, supporting the clinical evidence, expanding the sales reach, it takes investment.
Makes sense. What about their cash balance? Investing more and having a bigger loss usually impacts cash.
It did. They ended Q1 with 22.8 million in cash and equivalents.
Down from
29.8 million at the end of last quarter, Q4 2024. They pointed to cash used in operations as the main reason.
Okay, almost 7 million burned in the quarter. And did they say anything about needing more cash?
They did. They specifically mentioned on the call that they are, and I quote, considering financing options.
Right. That's always a flag to watch. We should definitely circle back to that. But first, let's look at the positive momentum. Where are things going well in the core HIFU business?
Placements. System placements were a real highlight. They placed a record 9 Focal One systems in Q1.
9 in one quarter.
Yep, record for a first quarter. 6 were cash sales, 3 were operating leases.
That does sound strong for capital equipment. Did they mention where these systems went? Any notable names?
They did. In the U.S., the cash sales included Baylor Scott and White Health and Methodist Charlton Medical Center, both in Dallas.
Okay.
And the leases went to some really significant institutions. Vanderbilt University, the University of Colorado, and Kaiser Permanente, Sacramento.
Wow, those are big names. Vanderbilt, Colorado, Kaiser. Placing systems there seems, well, strategically important, doesn't it? Why those kinds of places?
Oh, absolutely. It's huge validation. These are major academic centers, large healthcare systems. Places like Vandy in Colorado are also NCCN members.
National Comprehensive Cancer Network, their guidelines are super influential.
Exactly. Getting technology into NCCN centers helps build credibility, influences how doctors practice, and really importantly, it can pave the way for better insurance coverage down the line.
Right, the payer piece.
And University of Colorado also has a top urologic oncology fellowship program, an SUO fellowship, training future leaders on your tech. That's smart long-term thinking.
So it's not just selling a box, it's embedding the tech in the ecosystem. Makes sense. Was there international activity too?
Yes. For cash sales outside the U.S. spread across Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. So growing footprint globally.
Okay, systems going in. What about usage? Are procedures growing on the systems already installed?
In the U.S., yes. Procedures were up about 4% compared to last year's Q1.
Only 4%. That seems a bit modest, maybe, given the placement growth.
Well, management actually flagged a challenge here. They talked about longer, tougher reviews and approvals for procedures by insurance payers.
Ah, the payer friction.
Yeah, particularly mentioning Medicare Advantage plans. It's taking more work, more appeals to get procedures approved.
Is that an EDP-specific problem or something broader?
They stated they believe it's an industry-wide headwind right now, affecting other technologies too, not just Focal One.
Okay, so a broader healthcare system issue. How are they tackling it?
They said they're working closely with hospitals and doctors, using their clinical data like that HIFU study we've discussed before to make the case. They're winning most appeals, apparently, but it definitely slows things down.
Right. That clinical data seems key. Let's dive into that. What were the big updates on the clinical and regulatory front?
Well, one interesting development wasn't prostate cancer. They got CE mark approval in Europe back in March for using Focal One to treat deep infiltrating endometriosis.
Endometriosis, okay, that's a significant expansion of potential use.
It is a non-invasive option for a really debilitating condition. They're planning a careful, controlled launch in Europe for that indication.
Very interesting, but prostate cancer is still the main event, yeah. What's new there?
Big news there. They presented results from a major randomized controlled trial called FARP at the big AUA urology meeting this year.
AUA, American Urological Association, and ARP. Randomized trial means
high-quality evidence, what they call level 1 evidence, comparing their focal therapy head-to-head against the traditional standard of care.
Which is radical prostatectomy, right? Removing the whole prostate.
Exactly. And the headline finding from FARP was, well, pretty compelling.
Don't leave us hanging. What did it show?
It showed non-inferiority. At 3 years, the treatment failure rate for focal ablation with Focal One was 6.5%. For radical prostatectomy, it was 8.5%.
So statistically similar outcomes in terms of treatment failure.
That's what non-inferiority means in this context, yes. Similar cancer control.
Wow. Okay, that is significant. Because radical surgery, while effective, has those well-known risks of side effects: incontinence, erectile dysfunction.
Precisely. So the potential promise here is achieving similar cancer control outcomes, but with a focal treatment that's designed to preserve quality of life much better. That's the holy grail, really.
And this isn't the only study showing this, right? They mentioned another one.
Right. They referenced the HIFU study again, which was also a landmark trial showing non-inferiority. So now they have multiple strains of high-level evidence.
Okay, so this growing mountain of level 1 data, how does management see this impacting the business, like overcoming those payer hurdles we talked about?
They see it as absolutely fundamental. This kind of data is what changes minds, what influences treatment guidelines through groups like the NCCN, and ultimately what convinces insurers to cover procedures more readily. It's their main weapon against those access challenges.
Makes sense. Data talks. Beyond the clinical side, any cool new technology they unveiled?
Yeah, they launched a new system at AUA, the Focal One Eye Robotic HIFU system.
Focal One Eye. What's the I stand for? Improved. Intelligent.
Probably a bit of all that. They said it's based on user feedback. It integrates better with the latest imaging, uses AI algorithms, and this is the really interesting part. It has remote capabilities.
Remote, like a surgeon operating from somewhere else.
Exactly. They actually did a demonstration they called groundbreaking, the world's first remote transatlantic Focal One procedure.
Get out. Seriously, how did that work?
A surgeon at the Cleveland Clinic in Ohio remotely controlled the Focal One robot treating a patient at Cleveland Clinic, Abu Dhabi.
Wow. Across the Atlantic. Using a special workstation, I assume.
Yeah, a proprietary remote workstation. It's pretty futuristic stuff.
What are the real world implications of that kind of tech? Is it just a gimmick or is there a practical use?
Management sees real potential. Think about training an expert surgeon could remotely mentor or proctor a less experienced one anywhere in the world.
Ah, okay. Faster skills transfer.
Right. And potentially broader patient access. If the best expert isn't near you, maybe they could still perform or guide your procedure remotely someday. It showcases the platform's sophistication.
And they're drumming up interest in this robotic approach.
Seems so. They mentioned a master class they held with USC just before AUA, focused on robotic focal HIFU. Drew about 100 urologists from 14 countries. EDAP is a sole sponsor.
Okay, so building momentum around the tech and the data. We've covered the strategy, the numbers, placements, data, tech, but we also touched on challenges. Payer pushback was one. Anything else creating headwinds?
Yes, tariffs, potential tariffs. They said there was no impact in Q1, but they're forecasting a possible 10% tariff hitting in Q2.
On what specifically?
On goods shipped from France to the U.S. And that's significant for EIP because apparently 80 to 90% of the Focal One components in all the assembly happens in France.
Ouch, a 10% hit on potentially 100% of your main product's cost base. That could hurt margins if it happens.
Definitely something they're watching closely. Adds another layer of complexity.
Okay. So, navigating payer issues, potential tariffs, plus the planned decline in the non-core business. Given all that, what's the company's outlook? Did they update their forecast for the full year 2025?
They actually reiterated their previous guidance. No changes.
Okay. And remind us what that guidance was.
They're still expecting the core HIFU revenue to grow pretty strongly, predicting between 16% and 25% growth for the full year compared to 2024.
16 to 25% growth for HIFU.
Right. And at the same time, they expect those non-core businesses, ESWL and distribution, to decline between 20% and 25%. Again, sticking to the strategy.
So despite the Q1 headline revenue dip, the bigger loss, the cash burn prompting financing considerations, and these headwinds, management is still projecting confidence in that core HIFU growth for the year.
That's the message they deliver. They acknowledge, that capital equipment sales can be lumpy quarter to quarter, and the payer stuff is ongoing work. But they believe the underlying demand, the placements, the clinical data, it all supports hitting that HIFU growth range as they execute their focus plan.
All right, so just a reminder for everyone listening to TalkTickers, this has been our deep dive into the information EDAP TMS shared on their Q1 2025 call. It is absolutely not financial advice.
Nope. We're analysts digging into the transcript, pulling out the key points from what the company itself reported and discussed. We're not telling you what to do with your money.
Our goal is just to help you understand the dynamics here. This company pivoting hard towards HIFU, investing heavily, showing some strong clinical results.
But also facing real challenges with market access, cash flow, and potential external costs like tariffs. It's complex.
It really is. You've got this focused growth story backed by, frankly, pretty impressive clinical data and some cool tech. But then you have the financial pressures, the need to maybe raise cash, and these hurdles like insurance approvals and tariffs.
It's that classic tension, isn't it? The potential of the innovation versus the friction of the real world.
Exactly. So here's maybe the provocative thought to leave you with from this deep dive. You have level 1 evidence now showing this focal therapy holds its own against radical surgery, potentially with fewer side effects. You have tech like remote capabilities that could speed up adoption. How fast can that combination, the strong data and the new tech, actually overcome those hurdles like payer pushback and financial constraints?
Yeah, how quickly does that adoption curve really steepen? Can the clinical need and the tech advancements force the system to adapt faster?
What does this deep dive tell you about how quickly the standard of care for something like prostate cancer might actually change?
Definitely a lot to think about there. It's a space we'll be keeping a close eye on.